All right, so you've been looking into this whole thing with the U.S. and Denmark and Greenland,
Hmm.
and you've probably realized by now that
Yeah.
it's a lot more complicated than
Yeah.
it might seem at first glance.
Oh, yeah.
It's really fascinating.
We've got this news piece here from Pappy WP News,
Okay.
and it really kind of lays out how much tension there is between these two countries
Right.
that honestly,
You'd think they'd be buddies.
you'd think they'd be the best of friends.
Yeah.
So let's dive into this a little bit.
Okay.
Figure out what's really going on here, why should we care,
Mm-hmm.
and what does it tell us about
Yeah.
how all the pieces on the world stage are moving around, you know?
It's wild how something that seems so simple on the surface
Right.
can actually be so layered and complex
Yeah.
when you look at the history and the resources involved.
Yeah. And all the different countries
Yeah,
that
yeah.
want a piece of it.
Absolutely. And this whole thing with the U.S. vice president
Yeah.
saying
The Danes are not a good ally.
that's a pretty strong statement.
It is, and it's not something you just throw around lightly, right?
No, you don't just say that about your friends.
Exactly. So we have to understand the context.
Okay, so what was he really getting at?
Well, the statement was specifically about Denmark's control over Greenland
Okay.
and how they've been handling those shipping routes
Ah,
that are becoming super important for countries like China and Russia.
so Greenland is really the heart of the matter here.
Greenland is like this.
Why is it such a big deal?
It's like a treasure chest
Okay.
in the middle of a really strategically important location.
Okay.
We're talking a ton of valuable resources.
Like what kind of stuff are we talking about?
Oil, gas, rare earth minerals.
Wow.
You name it.
Mm.
And then you add climate change into the mix.
Right.
The Arctic ice is melting,
Yeah.
opening up these new shipping routes,
Yeah.
making Greenland even more attractive.
So everybody wants a piece of Greenland.
It's basically become a geopolitical hotspot. And that puts Denmark in a really tough spot.
Yeah, I can imagine.
They got to balance their relationship with the U.S.
Right. An old ally.
Exactly. A long-standing ally.
Right.
But they also need to stand up for their own sovereignty and
Yeah.
their own interests, especially when it comes to Greenland.
So the U.S. is frustrated with how Denmark's handling this whole thing.
Yeah, they see Denmark's approach, especially allowing access to China,
Right.
as potentially harmful to their own interests in the region.
What are they worried about specifically?
They're worried about China and Russia
Oh.
getting a foothold in the Arctic
Okay.
and challenging their influence.
So they want Denmark to
They
basically
want them to be tougher
be tougher.
on China and Russia when it comes to Greenland.
But isn't that kind of putting Denmark in a bind?
It is. It's a delicate balancing act.
Right.
They don't want to make Russia angry,
Especially now.
especially with everything going on in Europe right now.
Exactly.
Plus, they don't want to completely shut out China.
Right. Because
China's got a growing economic presence in the Arctic.
so they need them at least a little bit.
Exactly.
And this is where that news piece gets really juicy.
Oh, yeah.
The Danish prime minister did not take the VP's comments lying down.
No, she did not.
She fired back pretty hard.
She did.
She reminded everybody
Sure did.
about how much Denmark has done for the U.S.,
For all the contributions they've made.
especially in those U.S.-led initiatives
Oh,
over the years.
Absolutely.
And she brought up a point that I think really hits home.
Yeah.
Danish soldiers have fought and died
Right. Alongside.
American forces in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yeah, it wasn't just talk.
Right? It wasn't just like a political...
That's a real commitment.
It was boots on the ground.
Boots on the ground, lives lost.
And that puts it in a whole different light.
It really does.
It's not just about politics anymore. It's about real human cost.
Absolutely.
And despite all this tension,
Yeah.
the prime minister still said that Denmark is committed to working with the U.S.
Especially in the Arctic.
Yeah, so they're still trying to be partners,
They know that partnership is crucial,
especially with the whole Russia situation.
especially with all the tension with Russia.
It seems kind of contradictory, though.
How so?
The U.S. is criticizing Denmark,
Right.
but they still need them for all these strategic goals,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to pushing back against Russia.
That's the thing about geopolitics.
It's messy.
It's messy. It's not always black and white.
Right.
It's about figuring out where your interests align,
Right.
where they clash,
Right.
managing your alliances,
Right.
and ultimately trying to secure your place in the world.
Yeah, and the world's changing so fast.
Exactly. It's constantly evolving.
So this whole fight between the U.S. and Denmark
Yeah.
over Greenland,
Mm-hmm.
it's actually about way more than just Greenland.
Oh, yeah. It exposes all these bigger issues.
Like what?
The shifting balance of power,
Okay.
the scramble for resources,
Mm-hmm.
the future of the Arctic,
It really makes you think.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah. As the Arctic becomes even more important, how is this all going to play out?
Right. How will it affect the relationship between the U.S. and Denmark and Greenland?
Yeah.
And what about China and Russia?
Are they just going to sit on the sidelines?
How will they assert themselves?
That's a lot to think about.
It is.
And we've really only just scratched the surface here.
We have. It's a complex situation.
It'll be interesting to see how it all develops.
It will be fascinating to watch it unfold.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely a lot of moving pieces.
A lot of moving pieces.
All right. Well, that's all the time we have for today.
All right.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time
See you later.
for another deep dive.
Bye.
Bye.